And there we have it, we're recording. So again, welcome all to Community Inclusion for the North Carolina Department of Public Safety on this great October 8th, 2020. I can't believe we are already in October. I am Becky Facina. I'm with Alliance Health. I'm their community education specialist out of their Johnston County office. And I didn't realize, for those of you that have been here for the last couple of trainings, you all know nothing about me except that I am a community education specialist. And what in the world is my background to make me eligible to do this? Well, in my former life, I was a special educator for 7th through 12th graders. And then after that, I was a school administrator for students with severe behavioral and emotional disabilities. And I absolutely found my passion there and my drive, and I loved every minute of it. But having 3 kids in 3 years, I decided that school administration was no longer for me. And decided to stay home with my kids for a couple of years. They're still toddlers, but I also realized that I'm not the greatest stay-at-home mom. I needed to work. And so I stumbled into being a mental health educator. And I think I really and truly found my passion. It only took me 17 years of working to find out that my passion lies in community education around mental health and mental wellness. So here I am. I work for Alliance Health. And who is Alliance Health? You probably have seen this slide if you've joined me other times during this last month. We are the local management entity managed care organization for public behavioral health care in Durham, Wake, Cumberland, and Johnston counties. Again, I work out of the Johnston County office, which is located in Smithfield. We serve approximately 471,000 and more Medicaid eligible and uninsured individuals among a total population of people of about 1.7 million. And so we manage this network of providers. There's about 2,000 providers currently in our network. But we not only manage the network of providers, but we want to ensure that they're providing quality care, that individuals are able to access that care and then navigate systems, because it can often be very cumbersome and difficult to navigate those systems. I want to highlight that Hope for NC. Again, this is probably the 3rd time you've heard it, if you've chimed in for all 3 sessions, but it's super important for us to be able to share this information with you and whomever might be on today. So this is the 1-855 number. It connects North Carolinians to additional mental health and resilience supports to help them cope and build resilience during times of crisis. This is specifically directed towards the COVID pandemic. It's in all of North Carolina's 100 counties. Hope for NC includes a crisis counseling program tailored for COVID-19, which will provide immediate crisis counseling services to individuals affected by the pandemic. This initiative is in partnership with all 7 of the state's LME MCOs, so that's Alliance and all of the other ones that are out there, as well as Real Crisis Intervention Incorporated in Greenville. Hope for NC is now available 24 hours per day, 7 days a week, to speak to a live person. And so before we begin to discuss inclusion of persons with severe mental illness, or SMI, as oftentimes you may hear called, we must first talk about stigma and the facts versus the myths. So where do we get most of our information? If you want to throw that in the chat box, where do we get most of our information in this day and age? Online, absolutely. In some way, shape, or form, right? Whether it's via your WRAL or your newspapers, Facebook, TV, articles that are posted on Facebook, whether or not they're vetted, right? So we're getting these messages all over the place. So in a recent study of TV and film drama, approximately 73% of people with mental disorders were depicted as violent. In the same study, almost 23% of people with mental disorders were depicted as homicidal maniacs. And in TV and print news programs, almost 90% of stories about people with mental disorders depicted them as violent and homicidal. And so this is what's creating this stigma and these misunderstood ideas around people with severe mental illnesses. So what is the truth? So I normally don't read straight from the slides, but this one's really important and I want us to all hear it. And so if you look at that first pie graph, 42% of people with a mental illness face stigma and discrimination at least one time per month. 42%. 58% of sufferers say the stigma and discrimination is as damaging or harder to deal with than the illness itself. That really resonated with me. I'm going to repeat that one again. 58% of sufferers say the stigma and discrimination is as damaging or harder to deal with than the illness itself. And then 63% of adults know someone with a mental health problem. That's the truth. The myth is that people who are mentally ill are violent. That's just not true. Research indicates that people receiving treatment for a mental disorder are no more violent or dangerous than the general population. People living with a mental disorder are more likely to be victims of violence, especially self-harm. It has been calculated that the lifetime risk of someone with a disorder such as schizophrenia seriously harming or killing another person is just 0.005%. That's 5/1000th%. Super small. While the risk of that person killing themselves is nearly 10%. Huge difference between the two numbers. So the facts are that people with mental disorders are 12 times more likely to be the victims of violence than the population. Violent behavior by anyone is generally aimed at family and friends and usually happening at home and not in public. So this slide may be a little bit hard to read, but you can find it online. And again, you'll get this when I send you all the slides. But this is from 2017. And although it's not 2020, typically we look at any information or research that's done in the last 5 years as valid. So this is valid research from 2017. And it says that 18% of adults have a mental health condition. That's over 43 million Americans, 18 and older, and that's how we categorize adults, 18 and older. Nearly half of those 43 million have a co-occurring substance abuse disorder. So they've got the mental health condition as well as a substance use disorder. 9.6 million experience suicide ideation. As you can see, the cards are already stacked against persons with severe mental illness. How do we go about changing hearts and minds regarding ideas around inclusion? So let's begin with what is not inclusion. Again, what is not inclusion? Because you hear people all the time talking about being inclusive and we need to be more inclusive, we need to include others. So let's see, what is it not? Let's explore what it isn't and then what it really is. So inclusion is not clustering people with severe mental illness into one home, one classroom, one workplace, or one social center. Inclusion is not giving special privileges to people with severe mental illness. Inclusion is not feeling sorry for people with severe mental illness. So inclusion can look like a lot of things. Inclusion can look like David, who is supported to start a local business enterprise where he delivers coffee and lunch orders for local retail and office workers for a fee. So David's running his own little small business with the correct supports, mind you. Inclusion can also look like Ingrid, who spends 3 hours a week at her local bike shop learning how to change tires and adjust gears and chains. Ingrid is then introduced to the local bike users group and is slowly gaining confidence to go on their nightly rides with the whole group. So in the chat box, can you think of other examples of community inclusion? What might it look like maybe in your community, maybe at your place of work? Any thoughts around that? I can think of a big one in the school system. What does inclusion look like in the school system? So inclusion in the school system, worship services, I'm sorry, I don't want to ignore Chaplain Hackett, worship services with all who desire to come. Absolutely. And I'll go one step further. Absolutely all that who desire to come, but then including them within the congregation. So letting them sit where they want to sit, not having that last bench or that last pew or that last row, letting them sit among the parishioners and among the congregation. That's inclusion. So thank you for that. In schools, we want to include those individuals that have disability into the general population of education, right? As much as possible, as much as their educational and their behavioral abilities that they can be included, given their educational and behavioral abilities. So making them feel welcome, not having them do pull-outs, right? We talk about pull-outs in education. So a kid that has an IEP, the teacher will come in and pull them out. Well, let's not pull them out. Let's come to them. Let's include them in that general population of students. That's inclusion. So thank you for that. That's what inclusion can look like. So when we talk about community inclusion is providing individuals with severe mental illness the opportunity to live in the community and be valued for one's uniqueness and abilities like everyone else. And I highlighted and italicized everyone else. When you talk to people with severe mental illness, really and truly, all they want to do is they want to be treated equally just like everybody else. And that's all they want. They want to be respected. They want to be included. They want to have their own home. They want to have their own apartment. They want to make their own money and pay their own bills. They just want to be treated like everyone else. And so this includes area of family life, gainful employment, like I just said, social connections. When we talked about the bike riding, you can think about knitting circles, right? Including people in knitting circles and other group activities, hiking, anything you can think of. Civic activity, recreational pursuits, and staying fit. I often think of some of our local gyms that we have had lots of conversations with about not giving them their hour of the day or their hour out of the week, but just letting them come. That's it, just let them come. And if they need that extra help or that extra support, you have people there that are available that help everyone else with the machines. That's me, that doesn't know how to use a machine and I have to ask for help. And you support them like you would support anyone else. Because the myth is that people with severe mental illnesses are violent, and it's just not true. They just want to be treated like everybody else. So research in the field demonstrates that people with mental illness, number one, they remain interested throughout their lives in participating in community life. Like I just said, they want to be a part of the community. Number two is that they benefit substantially from engagement in the everyday world around them. Mental health and wellness. And number three, that they are demonstrable, that they are demonstrable, capable with support of community participation, which all that means is that they can do it with the correct supports. The supports have to be there. And the supports only need to be there, honestly, until they can do it in and of themselves. If they're ready to fly, then we let them fly. So what do we need to do, really and truly, to be able to create an environment, to create a world, to create a state or a county or a community that is ready to accept and engage individuals with severe mental illness? So the first thing we need to do is we need to educate. So create opportunities to learn and teach others about community inclusion. And that's what I'm doing right here. And you will be able to do it too, because I'm going to send you this PowerPoint. Talk to community groups whenever you can, neighborhood groups, civic associations, employer councils, religious congregations, local schools, and more are all going to be impacted by and can contribute to inclusion activities. Oftentimes they just don't know how to do it. They don't know where to start. They don't have the ideas. They don't think that they have the capacity or the wherewithal. And truly, they do. You can start with baby steps and make larger gains as you go along. Number 2 is commit. Build the commitment of key stakeholders to community inclusion goals. And so one of the things that we did here at Alliance is we started a pilot program. And so we worked with an organization called I2I. They're out of Cary, but they are a statewide organization. And we got a little bit of money because we wrote a pilot program. And one of the key components of our pilot program was to educate the community about inclusion. And so I created this PowerPoint for part of the pilot program, and we were able to hold a kickoff celebration back before COVID hit, and we had plans to do others in other areas, and then COVID struck. So start a pilot program. You can further clarify your commitment to community inclusion by creating a community participation pilot program. And I'm willing to help you all out there if you need some ideas or some supports or resources to do that, or if you want to take my slideshow on the road, and I can facilitate another training for you at some point in time with any of your stakeholders. I'd be happy to do that. Assess. So take stock of your current policies, programs, and practices and their impact. And so when I say assess, I'm talking about assessing your agency policies, your agency programs and practices. You may want to turn to your community inclusion advisory group if you have one, or you may want to create one for an assessment of the degree to which the agency's current policies, programs, and practices serve as barriers or supports for community inclusion. And we know the ultimate key to making change is always at the policy level. And so if you can really start at looking at policies, whether it's on a small scale at your organization or even at your church or some other organization or place, really changing policies is the most impactful way to create change. Fund. Develop new funding patterns. That's always an issue, right? Money is always the issue. Develop new funding patterns or new funding opportunities to support your work. So what does that mean? So draw on the resources of peer support. Does anyone know what a peer support is or a peer support specialist is? If you do, could you please throw that in the chat box for me? Anyone heard of a peer support or peer support specialist? Well, guess what? I'm going to tell you. A peer support specialist is someone that has lived experience. And so that might look like someone with severe mental illness that is functioning well, that has been functioning well for a period of time, and that has been hired by an organization to help others along the way who also have severe mental illnesses. And so because this is not a somewhat new initiative, it's not a new initiative, but maybe it's a somewhat new initiative. A lot of states, some of the federal government, they're giving monies to agencies to hire peer support specialists, because what we're finding is that someone with a severe mental illness, or let's just talk about a substance use disorder, they are much more likely to connect with another individual that has gone through the same plight, or that has had the same issue, or that has had the same struggle. And so when we look at persons that are dealing with substance use disorders, we usually connect them with a person that is a peer support specialist. They go out into the community, they go out into their home, they take them to their appointments, they have those conversations with them because they've been there. They've been there and they can see that recovery is possible, that being well is possible, that holding a job is possible, that getting your own apartment or paying your own bills, or maybe even having your own transportation, it's all possible. But being able to connect them to a peer support so that they can physically see it and understand it and know that it's possible has proven to really work and be beneficial. So that's what a peer support specialist is. So draw on those resources. Behavioral health programs with funding to hire, train, and supervise peer specialists may want to create job descriptions that emphasize community inclusion. So that would be part of that peer support specialist job description, to look at ideas and initiatives around community inclusion and how do we get those individuals with SMI included into our communities. Train. Prepare current and new staff for their community inclusion support roles. So again, coming up with what that idea is going to look like and then training them on it. They need to know what it is they need to do. So assign responsibility. Community inclusion could be a part of the work of all clinicians and case managers, activity therapists, vocational counselors, if there's any vocational counselors out there, peer specialists and volunteers. But more substantial progress will be made when the core responsibilities for establishing and working toward individual community inclusion goals is part of the primary job description of specific staff. So all this is really saying is that you need to put it in their target, into their goals. You know, when we develop, I have to develop my work plan or my work goals for myself. Part of it should have that community inclusion piece. If you don't write it down, if you don't put it on paper, then it doesn't get done, right? So making it very specific and then holding staff accountable for it. Program. Frame innovative programs that rely upon rehabilitation supports technology. Promote competitive employment. Build a team of supported employment specialists that can help serve recipients to quickly find a job in the competitive labor market or a mainstream job training program and support them over time in building their careers. And I know this one can be difficult, again, because of the stigma that is around individuals that have severe mental illnesses. And so that is, you know, they could be volatile, their hygiene may not be that great, they may go on and off of their medications. And so being able, again, to work with them, to train them, to practice those interviewing skills, to also really find in the community which businesses and organizations have already opened their doors to individuals with disabilities. We have several here locally that I know that have employed individuals with disabilities, not sure specifically which type of disabilities, but I know that they're open to the idea of employing them. And so then having that conversation with them, well, you know what, I've got this great person I think that would be really great for this particular job. And yes, you know, he may have a severe mental illness, but these are the things that we can do to support him. And this is what he needs to do he needs to have to be able to function well in his role. And 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, you know, the employer is willing to give them a chance. And it really is about giving that person that one chance to prove themselves. And innovate. Draw upon peer specialists, which we talked about earlier, as key promoters of community inclusion. So they should be really hitting the mat and shouting this out at the rooftops, right? Work with your current peer specialists in your agency, if you have them, to explore their perspectives on expanding their roles to include community inclusion. Currently employed peer specialists may need an opportunity to consider adding a community inclusion agenda to their current responsibilities and may have a number of valued contributions to make as your agency considers these changes. And I'll reiterate this too, that it just doesn't need to be those peer support specialists, although they are key to making this work happen. However, it can be the voc rehab counselor, it can be the transition counselor, it can be any type of person that is going to engage them or attempt them to connect to their life outside of the organization or in the community. That's all it takes. Again, it takes one person. And then welcome, work with community groups to create more welcoming environments. And that's across the board. You know, we talked a little bit about churches, we talked a little bit about schools, but that's across the board. That's gyms, that's grocery stores, it's parks and rec, it could be organized sports, across the board, talking to those community groups to create more welcoming environments. Because I'm going to tell you, when I go to the gym and I don't feel welcomed, I guarantee you I'm not going back. And that's the same way that somebody with a severe mental illness feels. If they don't feel like they're welcomed, or that people want them there, or they think that they're being stared at, or they think whatever it may be that they think, if they have a bad experience, they're likely not to return. And they're also likely to not try it again. And it may take a long time for them to build up their courage to kind of put themselves out there again. It takes a lot of courage to do something like that. So build a community advisory group of supportive individuals and organizations. Identify the individuals and organizations in the community who have been supportive in the past. So maybe an employer, like I said, an educator or librarian, that's a really good one, the libraries, an interested pastor or rabbi, a flexible recreation department, and then form an advisory group that can both provide good advice to your program and make the case for building welcoming environments to the rest of the community. So really that partnership, you know, find one that's already is already welcoming. What are they doing? How are they making people feel welcome? And then trying to extrapolate and build upon that momentum. And then evaluate, assess regularly your program's progress in promoting community inclusion. And I say your program, that could be your program, your organization, your agency, whatever it may be. Develop evaluation designs to check in with both staff members and the community. It will be important to regularly assess both how staff members respond to new community inclusion initiatives and whether individuals or organizations in the community have concerns or maybe nothing but praise for these initiatives. And you may find a little bit of both. There may be some hesitation, there may be some pause, there may be some concerns. Maybe there might have been an incident with an individual where things didn't go so well. And it's important to have those check marks and those checks and balances so that you can get a pulse on where your community is, or where that organization is, or where that business or agency is. And hopefully, sincerely, that there will be nothing but praise, that those individuals with severe mental illness are welcomed into the community, are welcomed into the organization, are welcomed into the business, and that there's nothing but praise for having them there. That is my true hope out of all of this. And then celebrate. Highlight your successes and the achievements of service recipients. So focus the attention on community inclusion champions on your staff. As a former school principal, I don't manage anybody now, which I'm thankful for. But when I did manage a staff full of people, a school full of staff, we loved celebrating staff contributions and achievements. And so make sure you recognize the contributions of your staff to the achievements of your program in promoting community inclusion. And then celebrate those individuals that are putting themselves out there. You know, we can create the program, but we're not the ones putting ourselves out there and showing up to the gym, or going to that knitting club, or attending church, where oftentimes I may not have been welcomed. And so making sure that you celebrate those individuals too. And I encourage you to start now. So without waiting for a grand plan or sustainable funding or revised policies, you and your agency can take the initiative now, moving forward with community inclusion practices, programs, and policies that help service recipients with mental health issues to reconnect to community life. So we're going to try something a little bit different today, right? What we're going to do is I'm going to attempt, we'll see how well this goes, but I'm going to attempt to do a breakout discussion with you all. So I want to put you into breakout discussion rooms, and I'd really like to hear from you. So don't hang up, it's not over. Whether it's in your personal or professional life, Where can you make changes regarding community inclusion? What might it look like? So I'm going to break you out for just about 5 minutes. You're not going to know who's going to be in your room. So at which point in time, if you want to turn your cameras on, feel free to do so. You're certainly going to have to turn your mics on to be able to engage with each other. Breakout rooms are going to be 5 minutes, and then it'll do a countdown, and it'll return you back to this main screen. You're welcome to leave the breakout room early if you so choose to do so. But we're going to give it an old college try. Oh, Chaplain Hackett, you do not have a mic. It is okay. If you stay with us, no one has a mic. Sorry, no mic. Can you put in the chat box why don't you have a mic? I don't have a mic or camera. Oh, wow. No one has a mic. Oh, the state won't allow it. Okay, well, that makes total sense. Man, I should have asked about that beforehand. Okay, so that's okay. We won't do a breakout room. So let me revisit the initial question. Thank you guys for putting that in the chat box. I had no idea. So now moving forward, we will not plan to do breakout rooms. Good call. So I'm gonna revisit the question. Let's just throw it in the chat box, okay? That's not a problem whatsoever. So think about this, whether it's in your personal or professional life, where can you make changes regarding community inclusion? Think about your personal or professional life. Where can you make changes regarding community inclusion? And what might it look like? Are there things out there that you have seen in your community, changes that could be made? Just saying hello will help. That's a start. I'd like to revisit Chaplain Hackett's statement, which was church, right? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Chaplain, but does your church, do you know, are there individuals there with severe mental illness that attend church there? And if you don't know, or maybe if you do know, if you don't know, is there a way to be able to connect them with church services within the church, including those who have mental health? Excellent. And obviously, if they're incarcerated, then there is no option to include them in the larger community. But we also know that the prison population is filled with individuals with severe mental illness. And so really being able to connect those individuals as they exit the facility and exit prison, to be able to connect them with a potential church that is welcoming. And I don't know, Chaplain, if you have a list of churches that are more welcoming for individuals. We're working with a family who has a special needs child to include him in worship. Wonderful. Absolutely. In prison, they do have some interaction with community partners. Excellent. Being more open-minded helps. Lakeisha, a girl after my own heart. Deal with our own biases and misconceptions first. Absolutely. Absolutely. And being able to own it and say, I own this, and it may not be right, but I'm willing to learn and to get better and to be more accepting. Because society and the media has stigmatized individuals severely, has stigmatized individuals with severe mental illness severely. They really have. And so being able to, again, own your own biases and your misconceptions first. And I know for me, I have 3 little children. And so I really try to have those conversations with my children and talk to them about individuals that have disabilities, individuals that have mental illness, and that we are to be loving and accepting of everyone, even though they may look different, or they may talk different, or they may sound different, they may smell different, but we want to be loving and accepting. So absolutely. Not being so judgmental when you meet someone who is not like you. Yes, Gloria, I didn't read this before I said it. Being accepting of people the way they are, accepting them where they are. Absolutely. Setting up a buddy system. I like calling that a buddy system, Michelle. Setting up a buddy system such as the peer counselor you spoke about. Absolutely. And not every organization or every agency has the funding to do something like a peer support specialist. But again, if you're able to write that into the goal plan of some employees that, yes, one of the goals is for you to work with these individuals and connect them to X, Y, and Z in the community. Again, making us, I'm an employee too, making us accountable to do the work for those individuals that need to be included in the community. Oops, I am so sorry. I accidentally scrolled on forward. Playing your native flute. Raymond, tell us a little bit more about that, if you can, in the chat box. Yes, Leslie, speaking to the population about what they need to feel included. Absolutely. So, Leslie, you just nailed person-centered care and person-centered planning. So absolutely. Leslie, you may know what I want. You may think you know what I want, but that's not necessarily what I want. So including that individual, right? If we know that there is a job at the library, but this person has no interest in working at a library whatsoever, they want to work at the Food Lion, why are we going to drag them to an interview at the library when we know we want them, that they want to work in the food industry? So exactly, talking to them and finding out what they want in order, that's the first step for making them to feel included, is just talking to them, finding out what their needs and their desires and their wants are out of life. What would a great life look like for you? What are the things that you want to achieve? Take a stand when we see as someone being treated incorrectly, which is why we are here for this meeting. That is fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. I have a quick story to tell you. We were in New York City for a wedding back this past August, not COVID August, but the August before. And we were taking a walk in Central Park, and there was a gentleman with his head down at the table. And he was speaking to no one, and he looked disheveled, for lack of a better word. And my husband was with me. I'm about 5'2" and a half, maybe. And my husband is about 6'4". And something compelled me to walk over to that gentleman and just put my hand on his shoulder. And I wouldn't encourage everyone to do that, but you do what you feel comfortable. And I just put my hand on his shoulder and I said, "Are you okay?" And he turned to me and he looked me in the eye and he said, "Yes, thanks for asking." And Lakeisha, when you said to take a stand when we see someone being treated incorrectly, he wasn't being treated incorrectly, but he wasn't being noticed at all. And so that compelled me to speak to him. I felt comfortable. I was in an open space. There were lots of other people around. Park police were behind me, and I didn't think he was going to get aggressive. It wasn't in the back of my mind, but I knew that if he did, there would be people there to support me. But so we just have to, you have to remember that you can always be that one person for somebody, is what I'm saying. And if we don't treat each other with love and kindness and respect, we just can't move forward. And individuals with severe mental illness will continuously be excluded from society and from our community. Yes, Gloria, this session is being recorded for future reference. I think I did do it correctly this time. And so I wanted to have that conversation for us to think about that we can start small, like Chaplain said, in our church, that we can start small in our gyms. I know one thing that Alliance is doing is we're really working hard to get individuals out of group home settings. And you may have heard more about this across the state, but it is a real push. And we really, truly believe that individuals that can live on their own should live on their own and should have the opportunity to live on their own. And so we're working hard to do that because again, when we talk to individuals with severe mental issues and severe mental illnesses, they just want to have a normal life like everybody else. And so that's part of our mission and our goal setting for ourselves as an agency, is to really start looking at individuals that are in group living settings and getting them their own place, their own roof over their head. And so that's some exciting work that we're doing. So I thank you for this conversation today. This is me. I'm Becky Facina again. That's where you can reach me. My email, our website for future trainings, future community trainings, these trainings that we've set up, that Charlotte and Taisha have set up for you. This is only for you, but we also have community training. So if you go to our website and you click on the calendar there, you'll have to find it slightly embedded. It's not the easiest calendar to find, but it is there. And we have lots of different community trainings. Once I get this up onto YouTube, I will send you all the link to YouTube, and then you'll also have access to all of our other YouTube trainings. And so anytime we do a training, when I record it and it works correctly, we upload it to our YouTube channel, and it's there for you all to replay. Does anybody have any questions or comments for me today? Things that I can help you with, point you in the right direction? If you think of something later, again, there is my email and my phone number. That's actually my work number, my office phone number. I'm not in the office, but leave a message and I'll call you back. I do get my messages frequently. Well, I just wanted to go ahead and thank you. Oh, as always, thank you, Becky. Well, thank you, Taisha. Thank you for setting this up. Thank you for keeping me busy. I love doing this. If you all haven't figured it out, it's my passion. And I wish I was face-to-face with you all, but this will have to do until we can be face-to-face. I hope this information was helpful to you. Again, you'll get an email that should have the YouTube link, that should have the PowerPoint slides, as well as your certificate for participating. That's really important because you all did participate and you need to get proof of participating. So thank you, Chaplain. I'm glad you learned a lot. That is always my goal, that you learn something during this training, even if it's just one little tidbit. So thank you again. Enjoy your Thursday. And I am going to sign off. Take care.